Hi, welcome to another episode of Luncheonette with Laura Diaz. That's me, and I'm so excited to bring you this episode today. We're going to be talking to Judge Jerry Beth Cohen from Circuit 11 Dependency Court, and she's down there in the Miami area. I'm going to first give you a little background on the judge. She is in the Dependency and Criminal Drug Court divisions. She is recognized as a national expert on issues relating to child welfare, substance abuse, and mental health. She has worked on a national level with Department of Justice to develop curriculum and train dependency drug courts across the country. And Judge Cohen is the chair of the Community-Based Care Alliance in Miami-Dade County, tasked with overseeing the privatized child welfare system for the 11th Judicial Circuit. So you can see she's very qualified to talk to foster parents about working with the court system. So welcome, Judge.
Welcome to you and to all of the foster parents, and I'm very, very grateful to have this opportunity to speak to foster parents is this across the country or across the state?
Well, it's mainly across the state of Florida, but I will tell you that we've been known to attract some viewers from other states.
Well, I'm thrilled to have this opportunity.
Well, I'm so glad that you've been able to join us. My first question for you is really, from the bench, what are some of the recent changes and develops you've seen as far as working with foster parents in the court system?
Well, first let me say that I've been doing child welfare work for 13 years. So I was on the bench prior to the privatization and after the privatization, and I've seen dramatic shifts in the state of Florida in child welfare. I think that there are many foster parents that will remember a time when they took children into their care. They never met the bio parents. They never sat down with case managers to discuss how the case was progressing. They never came to court and were told not to come to court. They knew very little about the children. And then one day, after taking care of children, it could be for a period of years, the children were removed without any notice to them at all, placed back with their parents or with relatives of the children, and they never saw the children again. And when you describe a system like this, it's not only frightening, but it's inhumane. But that is the system that we all functioned in just 10 years ago. What I'm finding now is, and I'm happy to say that I've been very instrumental in the state in creating some of these changes in foster care, is we're looking at a system where foster parents are very much a part of the process. And that includes co-parenting. And what co-parenting means is that at the beginning of the case, the foster parents come into the court, the bio family, the extended bio family comes into the court with the caseworkers and the treatment professionals, and everybody has a chance to sit down together and get to know each other and understand what the goals are in the case, what the timelines are in the case, and what's necessary for the parents to get their children back. And what this process does is it devillainizes the bio parents. It makes the foster parents human so that the bio parents don't feel that the foster parents are trying to steal their children. Right. And for those children who understand what's going on, it makes them very comfortable that both their foster parents and their bio parents are working together as a team with the court.
I couldn't agree more.
To be transformational in our practice.
I completely agree with that, because I know even from when I began as a foster parent, a lot of times, there wasn't that interaction and it wasn't encouraged. And I can tell you from a child's perspective, because I'd like to think like everything that we're doing now is really focused on the child's best interests, and to have the foster parents and their biological family not communicating and working together, a lot of times I think that the child feels like they're splitting their loyalties, and it's very difficult for them.
Right, that's the problem, that there's a split, the children feel a split in loyalty. If I love my foster parents, I'm betraying my bio parents. Yet these foster parents are comforting me, they're getting up in the middle of the night with me, they're feeding me, they're getting me to school. So what we encourage our parents and foster parents to do is to go to doctor's appointments together. We encourage the bio parents to go to school, to speak to the teachers, to go to the children's events. We encourage our foster parents to supervise the visitation so that the children see that there is a comfortable relationship between the two sides. Now, obviously, in some cases, this isn't possible. If you have a severely mentally ill parent or a very violent parent, we're not going to put foster parents at risk. But those are the minority of the cases, not the majority of the cases. So this has been extremely, extremely successful. Now, the other part of it is that you're not walling the bio parents off from their children while they're in care. You're allowing them to go to the doctors, to talk to their treatment professionals, so that they understand exactly what's going on with their children, what kind of changes their children are going through. We used to send children home, and the parents had very little to do with them for many, many months, sometimes in excess of a year. So this keeps everybody very engaged. And again, we know with babies that frequent visitation is very, very important to create bonding. We want the babies to be able to bond with their bio parents, but also their foster parents. So this is something that we found has benefited the system all around. It takes very experienced caseworkers to facilitate this kind of interaction. They have to be trained. They have to agree with the philosophy. And it also takes a very skilled judge to be able to bring the parties together in the courtroom and to encourage everybody to speak up without one party feeling that the other party is betraying them. I can tell you that since we've been doing this, we've cut the fighting down in the courtroom between the bio family and the foster family. I've got the bio parents coming in and saying, I love this foster mother. I am so grateful. I call every day. I know exactly what's going on with my children. And quite frankly, who knows more about the children and their daily habits and preferences than the bio parents, even though the bio parents obviously have trouble and are in a situation that has required us to take their children out of their custody.
Well, and I think it also helps teach the parents to parent in that way. So maybe in the past these parents weren't quite as involved with the medical appointments or teacher conferences or maybe extracurricular activities. And then once the foster parent helps to engage them, then it teaches the parents that level of involvement and maybe, not to be afraid to get involved in those things and to, have those conferences. So I think it's definitely going to be a big benefit for all parties.
The modeling aspect of it is invaluable. And what we're finding is that our foster parents are becoming more and more involved in a teaching role, teaching the parents how to take care of their children, teaching the parents how to talk to professionals in the community, teaching the parents how to help the children with homework or read to them. And very importantly, when the children go home, the foster parents are prepared for it. And they know that the children are not going to be torn out of their lives. Many of our foster parents have become godparents. The children still go visit on weekends. They're taking the children to Disney World. So the bonds are not broken. And that creates an additional safety net around the family and especially around the children.
Well, Judge, have you seen, through this practice, have you seen an increase in the reunification process, the time it takes, or the time for permanency? Because I know one of the biggest frustrations of foster parents has been, we have biological parents that are just barely doing anything on their case plan, but it's just enough, and they keep extending it, and then years go by. But it seems to me, with what you're saying, with that level of intense involvement by all parties, that it should be expediting the process. What have you seen?
Well, first of all, we're bound by ASFA, which requires us to make decisions within a year on permanency. So very few of our children, especially the smaller children, the teenagers are a different issue, but the children, the pre-adolescents, the babies, we are not keeping them in care longer than about 12 to 15 months. We are making a permanency decision. I think that this helps enormously. And it also cuts out a lot of the fighting. I can tell you a lot of the attorneys that represent these foster parents didn't like this because they need the fighting. This has cut out the fighting. And the foster parents, in addition, assist the court in saying, you know what, I really think the child's ready to go home, or judge, I just don't think it's time. And believe it or not, this is the case even with foster adopt parents, because when they understand from the beginning that the goal of the case is reunification, and the reunification case plan needs to be meaningful, the visitation needs to be meaningful, the contact needs to be meaningful, they are prepared to keep the child if the child can't go home, but to give the child up if the child needs to go home. And when the child does go home and they've interacted with the parents and watched the parents, and they know that they will continue to have contact, they themselves are more comfortable with letting the child go. It's a much more humane way to foster children and then send children home. The other side of it is, if a parent cannot make it, they are more comfortable surrendering that child to this foster parent because they've had a relationship with the foster parent, they're not angry at the foster parent, and they're comfortable that this child is going to be in a good, loving environment. And that goes for the extended biological family as well. You have a family, say, with an elderly grandmother that just can't take the children. That grandmother has now become part of the children's life with the foster family. The foster family is more likely to allow continued contact. So it is a much gentler, more compassionate way to do child welfare.
I couldn't agree more. And you took the question right from me, and that was believing that even if they couldn't make it, absolutely. I've heard stories as well that they are much more willing to sign the surrenders and stay involved with that foster parent because they do see the love and the compassion that the foster parents had for the family as well. So it's a good thing. What about, have you seen any changes in involvement with foster parents? Are you seeing more of them get involved in this process and getting more engaged?
There was a lot of resistance to it in the beginning. And I think that the resistance largely came from the agencies. They saw this as another thing to do. You know, anything in child welfare that means change and means changing the way that you perceive things and the way that you do business is a battle. And for years, you know, foster parents, as I said, were on one side, bio parents on another, and they never met. You know, they didn't come together in any meaningful sense, and everybody got comfortable with it. It just wasn't working. The agencies resisted it. They really didn't want to do it. They felt that, oh, it won't work. But interestingly enough, the foster parents that had been doing this for years and years and years, they stood up and said, we've been doing this for years without the court. We've been doing this for years without the agencies. It works, we like it, and we want it. And once people were told right up front what was expected, they accepted it and said, you know what? Let's try this. Let's see how it works. And as it's been successful and as the word's gotten around in the foster parent gatherings, it's now become normalized. It's become very, very normalized in our system. People accept it and people believe that it's working. There are pockets that are resistant. Our judges are not talking about it as much as they should in court because it's a change for them as well. But I think that our lead agency has adopted it, and it is trickling down into the agencies. You know, one thing I used to hear from foster parents over and over and over for years and years and years is, when this child came into my home, not only wasn't I given any of the child's background, their family history, etc., but I wasn't told what the goal was in the case. They weren't honest with me. They wanted me to take the child, so they told me, that mom had a drug problem, she probably wouldn't get well, and I could keep the child. I wasn't prepared to give this child back. I was lied to. Nobody was honest with me. And as the case progressed, I wasn't given accurate information, and I was told not to come to court. The judge did not want to see me. And I heard this, I can't count the many, many times I heard this. That's all changing. Foster parents are expected to come to court. They are part of the court process. They're part of the system. They're not a party, but they're an important participant. They need to be in court. They need to talk to the judge. They need to express their opinion and their views. They need to tell us what's going on with the children in their custody. So if any foster parent across the state hears the judge doesn't want you there, the judge doesn't want to hear from you, I can tell you that we're training our judges through our court improvement project, and we are not training them that way. Across the state, we are training our judges to include foster parents in the process, to co-parent, and to consider foster parents as an important voice in the entire process from beginning to end. In cases where it's possible, my foster parents come to every hearing, or I have them on the phone. I know all of them, and I respect their opinions. Now, that doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with them or rule in a way that they may desire, but I'm going to take their opinion into account.
That's great news, and it brings up a really good question that that I think a lot of foster parents have. And when they're getting engaged, but they have concerns about that biological parent. Maybe they felt that at one of the visits the biological parent maybe was under the influence, or they had some kind of a conflict. Maybe the biological parent was being disrespectful. What would you advise the foster parent in handling that and sharing that information in a way that won't completely break the relationship between the foster parent and the biological parent, but that they could get that information known and get them the help they need?
I think that a good way to communicate is always to use the I message. So if it's coming up, preferably it should come up in a team conference with the caseworker, somebody who's skilled, who can facilitate the interchange. And the parent understanding that this is a safety issue for the children, the judge needs to know about it, the foster parent's concern, or with the disrespect that when you disrespected me, this is how I felt and this is why. Just like if a foster parent disrespected a bio parent, the message should be, this is how I felt when you disrespected me. And that's something that can be facilitated in court. Now, look, all of this requires a skilled judge and a skilled caseworker. I do primarily drug court, where I have a treatment team that surrounds the family, works with the foster family, works with the bio family, and we incorporate this kind of communication. But unfortunately, many of the caseworkers are still in the backward old mentality of prior child welfare, where everything is accusatory. Everything is seen as an indictment. And it just doesn't work with these families. And it doesn't work, it doesn't foster better feelings. If a bio parent is disrespectful, again, you use your modeling to answer in a respectful tone. Get the tension level down. Use the I message. And that is modeling behavior. Well, and also, I think that the foster parents need to understand that in the beginning, these parents are very angry. They're in a lot of denial. Most of them have substance abuse problems. Most of the women have suffered a lot of trauma, whether it's domestic violence, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, but so have the men. So they've really been in environments most of their life where nobody's treated them with any respect or any compassion, and they're angry. You've got to give them a chance to calm down, understand that nobody's trying to hurt them, that we're trying to help them, and that you're on their side. And that may be a process that takes a month or two. So just, keep the tension level down and move forward in a respectful response, and hopefully it will resolve a little bit. Co-parenting is not for every single case. There are some parents that you just can't co-parent with.
Right. What would you say to the foster parent who is afraid of some type of retaliation, or fear that if they speak up that the children are going to be removed from them if they're having some issues in this area?
Well, this is really the lead agency and the subcontractor issue. My feeling is that for too long, foster parents have felt that they were retaliated against if they called up and said, I'm not getting the services I need, or you were supposed to come and do X, Y, or Z, and you haven't done it. I heard for years foster parents come in and say, I really needed this service, Judge, but every time I called up, I felt like I was complaining, and I was threatened with having children taken out of my home. My feeling is that any caseworker that does or says that, where the foster parent is otherwise advocating for the child, being reasonable, should be fired with no questions asked, because this should be part of their initial training, that the foster parent is there to advocate for the child. I think that this message trickles down from the top, from the executive directors of these case management agencies and the lead agencies, down to the supervisors and the caseworkers. It should be an integral part of the education. We talk about it constantly in our jurisdiction. We are not accepting of it. It is wrong. It's gone on for too long. And the judge needs to advocate for the foster parent. Now, that doesn't mean the foster parent's always right. But I think that foster parents need to get the benefit of the doubt. It needs to be discussed. And if you have hired these foster parents on and you have sought fit to put children in their home, there should be no circumstances under which you are threatening them with retribution or being vindictive towards them. You should appreciate the fact that they're proactive. And this is something that the CMAs really need to take to heart, and this message needs to trickle down, and the judges need to support it.
Well, I have to say that I would think that they should love this, because to me, everything you're saying makes their job so much easier. I mean, the foster parents are doing a lot of the work that they used to do, in coordinating with the family, supervising the visits, going to the medical appointments. I remember back in the day when they used to, the case manager used to pick up the child, and we were told, no, you can't take them to the medical appointments. So it's really, I think, made a much more of a collaborative approach, and in a way help the case manager, not have to do quite as much.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. The foster parents can supervise visits. They can go to the doctor. They can go to the school. It's taken a tremendous load off of the caseworkers. And I'll tell you, coming to court and bringing the children to court is very important. We bring our children to court. The foster parents bring them in. This has made a big difference. And if the case managers know that the foster parent is going to come into court and talk to the judge, they are much less likely to take a threatening stance towards foster parents. So to the extent possible, it's very, very important to be there. We notice all of our foster parents about hearing dates, so they know exactly what's going on.
Well, we're about out of time. Is there anything else that you would really like to share with foster parents that are watching this program?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I want to thank them. Because most of the foster parents do such a marvelous job and are so dedicated. And I know that all of us in child welfare are so appreciative of what they do. I myself could not do it, so I'm just in awe of our foster parents. And I just also want to caution you that as much as we bring you into this system now and make you part of it, you are also under the jurisdiction of the court. So you're going to be required at the same time to follow orders of the court as well. And sometimes you may not agree with those orders or like those orders, but it's also very important that you understand that you are a court player and you need to follow the judge's order. However, you can be proactive in advocating in court and explaining to the judge why you may, respectfully, of course, why you may not agree with a certain order. But I just want you to understand that as well, that you are part of this process, because in the beginning we had a little trouble with foster parents because they weren't participatory up till then, understanding that they were also under the jurisdiction of the court.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's why we bring this show, Luncheonette, so we can inform everybody of the changes that are going on. And this interview and just the information, Judge, that you're giving is going to help foster parents to understand better, how they can advocate, become involved, and understand their role in the court. So I think it's fantastic. So I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this information. I'm sure our foster parents out there are going to get a lot of information from this, and I hope that it's going to, help them to better understand that role. So thanks for joining us today.
It was an absolute pleasure to do it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And with that, I'd like to share a little story here with our viewers. Ironically, a little story that came across from the Miami-Dade area. And this is from a foster parent, and it says, I was at a pulmonologist this morning. As I was leaving, a gorgeous little boy pointed to my son and said, look, Mommy, a baby. I explained to him that although he was in a wheelchair, he was not a baby. When his mom turned around, she screamed my name. Her son lived with me the first 14 months of his life. I co-parented with her as she was a lovely person. She hugged me close to her and thanked me for taking such good care of her son and having faith in her. She said she was doing great and her son looked very happy. He is almost 3 now. I left there with a warm feeling in my heart. Moments like these are so special. So I really feel like that kind of summarizes what we're talking about and the level of involvement and the change that we can make as foster parents by getting involved, co-parenting, and just loving on these children. Okay, so I've just got a couple of quick announcements. First of all, don't forget to keep an eye on our website for our recently posted videos, and that website is www.jitfl.com. Also, some really awesome news. Since it's summertime and we've got to find something to do with those kids, right? DCF has posted a searchable database of background checked camps that give us a great selection of camps where we can have peace of mind that they're being taken care of. So we're going to post that website, that link right here on the show, so you can take a look at that and see if there's some great camps you can sign your kids up for. Now, don't forget to email us with your topics, your suggestions, comments, questions, anything that we could possibly be of help. We're here for you guys. So you can email it to the email address we're showing on the screen, or don't forget, we have our Facebook page and you know how to find it, and we're going to post it here again also. So thanks again for watching us, and thanks again, Judge Cohen, for joining us today. I think it was awesome information, and we look forward to seeing you guys again on our next episode of Luncheonette with Laura Diaz. Bye-bye.